announcement in Discord. Okay, there's a little announcement. So while we're warming up here,
Yeah.
the thing I was going to say that I was thinking of was I try to think about how will this look when I go to the emergency room. And so when you find yourself on a ladder cleaning your gutter and like leaning way over like on your toes, and you're like, yeah, this is going to be really hard to explain. Not I can't do this, but
It,
you know,
everything comes around to what's it going to look like post mortem?
yes,
How embarrassed do you want to be
yes,
when you're explaining it to a doctor?
yes,
The other thing I
yes,
think about too is because Katie, she watches a lot of my flights, so I just think about she knows enough to know if I did something that was dumb. So like the like the wife TSB.
yes, yes, yeah,
We've got some folks in the chat. Hello, Alpha Juliet,
nice,
Arrow Grizzly, and Juliet Echo Foxtrot,
yeah. Colby, I
and
recognize that
Colby.
name. I think, yeah.
We don't have to recognize everybody.
I know,
R-
but
recognize them, for the floor. Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's. I think it's quite a midlife thing to look at all of life through the lens of litigation,
exactly.
and
Or
liability.
or
All the things
injury.
you just did
Yeah,
not when you didn't have a fully formed frontal lobe as a 21-year-old or whatever, you're not able to even register
yeah,
consequences. So I
yeah.
think we do think in terms of consequences, and that does have an effect on the midlife pilot phenomena.
Yes.
it is
Hey,
that
so I've had this
foresight and
image.
hindsight.
I've had
Sorry, go
this
ahead.
image sitting. I've had this image sitting in the design stuff for probably 4 or 5 weeks. It was mentioned on the show by somebody, and I don't think that I ever showed it. Let's see if I'm wrong.
That
Yeah, I
was
think
me.
All right.
Ben. That might be the one
Yes.
that you mentioned, Ben. And yeah,
Yes.
it's just such a great. You know, again, this is pre-podcast because I'm not going to try to explain this on the show, but yeah, such a great.
Are those all pivot mounts? That's a very expensive.
They look like suction
There's
mounts.
sections. Yeah.
But like the actual mount points are.
Oh,
Oh, I
Oh
see. They're
yeah.
all GoPros. They're not. They look like pivot mounts.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
So Aero Grizzly just went and saw the space shuttle that's in LA, and they show a video before you see it that's about how it was transported from the airport to the museum. And the
Mm,
thing that I love on it is that they use a boom truck, boom SUV. It has like the big crane and jibbed out and everything else, but it's a Porsche Cayenne. It's like
oh,
that's how you know you're LA. You've got a Porsche Cayenne with a camera jib sitting on top of it. So made me
I
think of that
think that
because of the GoPros. Yeah.
seems like that's like the car of choice for a lot of those rigs, and I guess it has something to
Yeah.
do with just how you need something that's kind of high performance.
Mm.
Um, like you don't want to put it on a Ford Escort, or like an old cop car.
the stability of those cars are pretty stout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining the old cop car now. Yeah. Very Blues Brothers. So
Well, do we want to get rolling?
yeah,
It's
let's
time.
ship it. Let's see, make sure we're live. Here we are.
Hello, and welcome to episode 51 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, a show where we talk all things aviation for those who are starting their aviation journey in midlife. We're all about sharing our experiences and the greater community's experiences as a midlifer. So, whether you're a student pilot, a seasoned veteran, or just an enthusiast who maybe wants to learn, we're glad you're with us tonight. My name's Ben. I'm an instrument-rated pilot here in the Atlanta metro area. I'm currently working on my commercial. We have with us tonight Mr. Brian Siskin. Good evening, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Ben?
Joining us from Nashville, Tennessee. Also from the West Coast, flying a plastic egg on a regular basis, Ted, our sport pilot extraordinaire. Hey, Ted.
Hey, how you doing?
We're good.
Yeah.
We're broadcasting live on YouTube, usually every Tuesday night around 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find us at youtube.com/@midlifepilotpodcast. You can get the audio only version at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. You can support us as little as 25 cents an episode. If you go look there's a link in the show notes where you can support us. All of that goes to help us keep this thing rolling, try to keep our heads above water. We have a merch store that's also will be a link in the show notes. T-shirts, hats, stickers, beautiful pint glass, a bunch of stuff. We'll be adding to it as we go along. And also, last thing, we have a great Discord community. A lot of things get discussed there. It's a great resource for people that are learning or sharing your experiences. Send us an email at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. And we'll send you an invite and you can join the fun. How's everybody been doing? Hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving. Ted?
Yeah.
Brian?
Well, I'm gonna interrupt here because two things. One, it has come to my attention, which this totally makes sense, but there are a lot of, I think it's a mass oversight on our part as the Midlife Pilot podcast that we assume that midlife pilots or anyone in midlife has any sense of what Discord even is or what it's for, or whether it's something you want to introduce to your life or not. All I can say is it's awesome. It's a community software platform, whatever you want to call it. You can do it web-based or you can install an app, and it's very simple and painless. And yes, just email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com and we will give you the keys to the kingdom. So
it should be noticed as the oldest in this trio. If I can do it, I can assure you anybody else out there can do it.
It was definitely one of those where you hop into Discord and you're like, what is this? How do I use this? How do I reply? It's not something that we all use a lot. Mark is sliding into the comments there. Mark was chatting with me, Mark T, and he was like, I installed the Discord app. I don't know how to get to the midlife stuff. And it's like, yeah, I get it. We're all, this is all new to us.
We will help you. We will guide you. We'll give you a specific link that just plugs you right in. All you have to do is email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. And then the other thing was, we have a lot of green room conversations before this thing starts off. That's why our hellos to each other are so weird.
Yeah.
But
staged.
The audio audience is our primary audience, but by far. And they're not going to be able to see this, but Ben, I'd like you to show everybody at the top of your head again. Come on.
Okay. Here we go.
Let's see.
I'm not responsible for anybody throwing up after this. If you're watching this on YouTube.
Let me see oh shoot.
There you go, Ted. You want to put me up?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how to do it.
Oh, we don't have to. This is fun.
Okay. There you go.
We can use
Nice,
our imaginations.
Were you able to see it?
Yeah.
So does anybody in the chat have a guess as to why Ben has a gash on the top of his head?
This is midlife and aviation related.
This is both. It is. If you've ever pre-flighted a Cessna 182, you know that one of the procedures is you put the flaps down, and I'm sure you do that in a lot of other airplanes. And it was raining, as had completed the pre-flight. Everybody was ready to go. And yeah, I was kind of running, and I really cracked my head on top of that. And with so much force that it threw me back, and I was landed flat on my back afterwards. Uh, I was
Yeah.
safe because my brother-in-law was with me flying right seat. Juliet Echo Foxtrot, we call those Cessna stars because you're usually crack your head on one of those. But yeah, it's got me thinking maybe a low wing would be better. I don't think it would happen, but I've been I wear a headset for work for all the Zoom and Teams meetings, and I very gently have to put my headset on my head so I don't hit the cache that's up there. But yeah, it's the midlife thing to do.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah. The eye roll I got from my wife was probably the loudest eye roll in our 26 years of marriage. So
Nice.
I think, but also I'm building a case to buy a low wing. So maybe that, will be further proof. And it's funny. Jody just put a comment in the chat. How's the plane? And I haven't told you guys this. I am not kidding about it. When we landed and we retracted the flaps, it was still down a little bit. It was like 1 degree down. It wasn't perfectly flush with the rest of the wing. So we're getting the oil change in there, and he's going to reset the flat limiter. Thanks to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the noggin you got there.
It is. It is. So yeah. Some would say that maybe I knocked a little bit of sense in my head, but who knows? How was y'all's Thanksgiving?
It was good. We had kind of amazing, unseasonably clear weather, and so I went out flying on 2 of the days, and I was going to go out. I thought about going out a third day. I'm like, I'm done. And my wife was like, "Really? You're not flying?" It's like, yeah, I know this is unusual, but I went out on Thanksgiving Day and went to what I think is the smallest SIFRA in the U.S. It's the second oldest airport in the U.S. It's VUO, and there weren't many people up, but people were having a good time. It's underneath PDX, which is a Class C, underneath PDX's airspace, and so the tower comes on and talks as an advisory, and you have to check in with PDX Tower, even though it's an untowered field, pilot controlled field. So I've got a little clip here of another pilot talking to the tower from that uncontrolled one.
Explain First Advisory again. First Advisory Cardinal 34602. Just want to give everybody there a shout out in the tower. Have a happy Thanksgiving. 602, Roger. Thanks. Same to you. We're having a good time. Had turkey and all the fixings, so it's been a decent day to work. As it should be. All right, 602.
Nice.
I like that at the very end when I was editing that. He's like, "All right," like there's this little bit of like the surfer sound in there that I hadn't noticed when I did it. But yeah, so then
It's
I went
good to
back
know
over
that
to my.
people in the tower. It's good to know people in the tower are still getting the fixins.
The fixes are important.
They have to work on Thanksgiving Day. It's nice that it's at least relaxed. So
Yeah.
I went back over to my Delta and landed, and then when I was on ground, I asked them kind of if they have anything, and here's that.
Charlie 2, Cross 2, Bravo 2. I hope you got pie up there. Say again? Do you have pie up there? We do have a pie up here. Thanks for asking. Good. I hope you have a good day. The peach crumb pie.
Nice.
So it's like touring towers and asking what food they have. Would have been a good way to like crash tower food, right? Yeah.
I wouldn't have expected peach crumb pie in Portland, Oregon.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Georgia,
That was a
yes,
surprise.
but not here. Not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like how at first he was sort of like, "Wait, what are you talking about? What?"
Yeah.
You're asking me human things, not airplane things.
Yeah.
What non-standard conversation are you trying to start while I'm trying to eat pie?
Yeah. How dare you interrupt me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
part of what we wanted to talk about tonight was the build up to your solo experience, your pre-solo and your solo experience. We've gotten a little bit of feedback from some listeners. Some of the one of the feedback was, getting the jitters. What makes you nervous, and how do you get over it? And we thought, and someone else had, I think, had written in, correct me if I'm wrong, asking to talk about this.
Do we want to read those?
I don't have them pulled up, but I can probably do so very quickly. But I was going to start us off because I had a bit of an unusual pre-solo leading up to solo experience. I had a bit of an issue with my medical, and it took a very long time to get it through. So I wanted to maintain my proficiency. So I was ready to solo in May of 2017, and I didn't actually do it until August.
Are we talking about pre-solo or
pre-solo up to May?
uh-huh.
So doing a lot of pattern work, and I was learning in the 182, so it took me a lot more laps into pattern than I think most people, because it's a little bit faster.
Mm.
I had a really good instructor for the first part, who then went off to the airlines, and the second instructor wasn't so good, but he set the roots, he set the foundation really well. And I got to where I was pretty consistent with them, and then thinking I was going to get my medical any day, and it took 3 months. So I had a lot of time to practice, is my point. That, I spent that 3 months not really going anywhere. We'd practice some the check ride maneuvers, steep turns, S turns, and points, turns around a point. But most of that time was spent really just fine tuning the landings. So when I got my medical, it was, the day I got my medical is the day that I soloed. Now, I will say the day that I soloed, if you look at the chart supplement of Romeo Yankee Yankee, one of the airport remarks is coyotes in and of the vicinity of the area. And both of you have been to Romeo Yankee Yankee, Cobb
Yeah.
Field.
Yeah.
It's in a pretty industrial area.
Yeah.
Nice quarry.
So, yeah. Hour, not an hour, probably 8 months of flying there, never seen a coyote. And I taxi out for my first solo, 5 coyotes in between the taxiway and the runway. So I had that thinking, oh, great. This is what I get to dodge on my first solo, pack of coyotes. And I called up the tower, and he said, by the time you get to the end of the runway, they're going to be gone. And he was right. They were gone as I was taking off. So, but that was it. I greased the first one, and then the other 2 were not greasers, but they were stiff but good landings. So
it's been downhill ever since. You had
It's
a
been downhill
greaser,
ever
and then you're just trying to chase that high. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. I have no idea what I did on that first one. I don't remember anything about that first lap in the pattern.
Yeah.
I have no memory whatsoever. When I watch the solo videos on YouTube, you always hear him say, "Oh, this plane is so much lighter." It felt no different for me whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
No different whatsoever. So, that was my experience. I wasn't really nervous just because I had that long build up waiting on my medical. And so I was super confident by the time I got there.
About how many hours did you have by the time you soloed?
I was probably around 45, 50 hours.
Yeah.
Because you had that delay. Otherwise,
Because that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And did you do touch and goes or full stop taxi bags?
Full stop taxi backs. I did the first one was a full stop taxi back. Then the second was a touch and go. At that time when we owned the airplane, we were doing a lot of touch and goes in it, but we decided to start babying the engine. And so we started doing full stop taxi back. So I wanted to do one of each for my 3 laps in the pattern.
What kind of celebration did your CFI do? Anything?
Well, my wife and 2 of my 3 kids were there for it. Which I guess the only other thought I had was, great, my kids are going to watch me drive this thing into the ground.
Yeah.
No, they do ice baths. Back when the school was owned by 2 guys, it was ice baths.
Mm-hmm.
A big bucket, and you stand there and they pour, and they waterboard you. They slowly drip
Yes.
this bucket of ice water.
Yeah.
while you scream bloody murder.
Well, because you had that delay and you had sort of extra time and kind of qualifications, do you think that took any shine off of the feeling that you had when it was done?
No. I would say it may have made it shinier because I had to persevere. I had to call the FAA twice a week to find out where it was, the medical area. And, it felt better because I had to fight through a lot of stuff, paperwork, red tape. And it felt to me a little bit more gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't whether I thought I could do it or not. It was, there's hurdles thrown in front of me and I was able to navigate them and get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
do you want to hear about mine?
I do. I was about to ask you. I want to, because I don't think neither Ted nor I know anything about your solo story.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is it is the full video is on my YouTube channel, which is at Brian Siskind or whatever. You can find me. But it was a lot because I had definitely a hard time learning how to land. And I was, I had a lot of frustration. And it's sort of like the light bulb comes on, you think you've got it, then it all kind of falls apart. And, it's that whole kind of thing. I guess I had about 24, 25 hours when I soloed. The thing about it though is, as a lot of a lot of what even got me started to flying in the first place was just because of, this whole kind of process around receiving my father's old flight bag and then kind of having a sort of an idea that maybe I should go and do this. So it was really nerve-wracking because I kind of felt the burden of my, even posthumously, right? Like I just had a lot of stuff I was processing with my dad all along that process. And when I was about to go solo, I was, obviously quite nervous or anxious or whatever you want to call it. And, was trying to figure out, what would he tell me or, what would he say? And I think the message I generally kind of got psychically or otherwise was sort of like, something just quite simple, along the lines of like, just do what you've been trained to do and actually take time to enjoy it kind of thing. Don't get so worried about it, kind of thing. So it turned out though, that the way it all landed, my first solo was on Father's Day. So that was,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
and by the way, I'll just say this, that, ahead of time in the couple weeks prior, seeing how this was all kind of shaking out, knowing that solo was coming soon, I was kind of, I don't know, raw. I would watch other people's first solo videos and it was just so overwhelming to me to watch, just the tension and release of that moment is unlike really anything else, I think, in aviation. And I kept kind of visualizing me doing this. And I just thought, man, how am I going to keep it together? I just feel like I'm going to be so emotional about it.
Right.
Yeah.
For reasons that are beyond me. It sort of seemed to tap into this kind of grief reservoir that had been left unattended for, 15 years or whatever. And so I just really wanted to do right by him. I really wanted to do well. I really wanted to honor aviation as a skill and as a discipline. And then of course it ends up being like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen actually on Father's Day. And I go up there, it's a perfect day, 6:30 in the morning or whatever. And I guess it was, June of 2021. And the other thing too was that I thought that I might solo the day before or the lesson before, maybe 2 days before. And we live very close to the airport. So my wife had actually, I think, come up thinking that I might solo. She didn't tell me though. And then she kind of told me that she was there, but it just, it didn't happen. but luckily I didn't have to coordinate or whatever. It was just
Right.
and we're 2 minutes away, and then this was sort of the same thing. I just kind of didn't want to have any other things going on, but she was there lurking and shooting some stuff with her cell phone or whatever. But the way that the actual experience went in terms of the flying, it's funny because as a video kind of editor or creator on some level, increasingly, during the training, I was just capturing I was leaving all the fat in there because there's a lot of nuance in all the fat of your video captures of your lessons. When I made my sort of first solo video, as it were, by the way, I started filming lesson 1 with the mindset of, by the time I get to my first solo, I'm going to be so used to just throwing up cameras and leaving them. And I think a lot of people get into this thing where they all of a sudden go, wait, I want to film this. And I don't think that that's necessarily, if you haven't been doing it all along, I don't think that's the time to start, strapping cameras to the plane, right. But, do as you will. So I had, kind of been prepared for that. And my instructor was used to it and everything was, so I just thought it was funny because, you go up and you do the first few landings and you're just hoping that you're on your game and you don't, when you're with the instructor, when he's kind of making sure that you're good, I had plenty fine, landings or whatever, I guess. And then, we do the pull over thing. And I've got video on my channel. You can see everything from that moment on. And I guess what I was getting at as far as like video creation, I wasn't doing it for views in the sense that I knew that the minutia of the experience was really what I wanted to keep. It wasn't just about the landings or whatever. So when you watch the video, it's I've got the entire taxi, the entire run up, or probably 2 run ups that I did, or whatever. And
triple check the magnetos.
Yeah, I knew that by the 3rd run up, everything was good. But just. I'm not addressing the camera. There's nothing going on. It's quiet at the airport. And so it's just this kind of, I'm just taxiing, the long taxi, and I'm just taxiing. And it's really interesting for me to go back and just kind of read my own kind of expression or whatever. Cause I wanted to remember how I felt at that part of it as much as anything else. And I really thought that as soon as my instructor said, see you later, and closed the door, I really thought that taxi would be the moment where this is made or broken in terms of just my emotional state,
right,
or
right.
whatever I'm carrying around this, and it was really neat because what happened was, and you can really, I think, see it in the video, is, you can almost just see the tunnel vision kind of focus kind of coming in. I wasn't high, I wasn't low, I wasn't worried, but I wasn't unworried. I was just focused, and everything just got to be about what I was doing. And that at that stage, especially, you don't have any extra bandwidth,
right.
To do anything else really, at least I didn't. And it worked out perfect. I was just focused, and I was but I was aware enough of myself in that moment to realize that that's what was happening. And that actually made me feel good that was my kind of having been trained response. And my training is kicking in, even if I'm just taxiing and observing things and getting ready to get into my checklists and whatever. So anyway, I take off, go around to do my first landing, and it was a totally good, fine landing, and just that relief,
right?
That feeling met with, and I did touch and goes, which in retrospect, I think that you should not do touch and goes on your first solo, but that's what he told me to do, so I just did it. Maybe it's better that way. Just keep going, But anyway,
right.
But just that moment of like you get it down, and just the relief that you didn't just trash the landing or the plane. But immediately you're already back into that. It's starting to happen fast, and you're so you kind of feel like, okay, I've got one under my belt. And then you have this internal voice, sort of like, well, this is going to be then where it all comes apart, because
right. It's
Yeah.
the devil and the angel on your shoulders. One's
Right.
like, well, get ready because here it comes.
But ultimately, you've got so many things that you're doing one step at a time.
Right,
You know,
right.
you kind of don't have enough bandwidth to really freak out. And then,
Well, and
so
you're
then
doing the same thing that you've been doing all along. It's that whole thing, like
yes,
you've been trained into this, and so now this is
yeah.
no big deal. You're
And
a little weirded out, but yeah,
and I had been verbalizing everything that I was doing in the plane as a habit in training. So you know, you'll see me in the video. I'm calling out everything. I only made a couple of goofy little mistakes and maybe some of the calls, or nothing crazy. But here's the thing. So all right. So then I come around. I do the second landing. It's fine. And then and now I'm coming back up. And I remember when I was on the downwind for the third landing, I had confidence now at this point. Like I'm almost done. And I realized that I hadn't taken time to really take it all in. And I just remember there was just that when I was about midfield downwind on my third lap, I just remember, and you can see it in the video, there was about, I swear it must be 3 or 4 seconds. You can just see it where you can see my shoulders kind of come down. I kind of look out the other direction and I see the fog laying down in the valley and everything. And I was just taking it all in, just the beauty of it and thinking about my dad or whatever. And then boom, it's like, you know, pull the power, flaps, you know, carb heat, doing all the things. You just kind of get right back into it. And so then but here's the thing. And if you go watch this video, you'll hear this. There was one plane that came in. He announced himself, I want to say like 8 miles out or something on a straight in, of course. Right.
Right.
And I think it was I want to say it was an extra or something. It was a very fast plane, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I just knew that there was a plane coming. I was just making calls. Because
you're untowered at this point, right?
Yeah, untowered.
John Toon hadn't the tower wasn't built yet.
Yeah, it opened up not long after that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's untowered, and I remember hearing it was the only thing that came in over the radio. It was so early on, I think a Sunday morning or whatever. And I remember just thinking, I don't see this guy. I don't see him. And he didn't make any other calls. And I mean, for good or for bad, I mean, I just thought, I don't know where he is. I didn't have the gumption or the pilot wherewithal at that stage to say, hey, dude, tell me, where are you?
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have any feeling that I could, you know, do that at that stage for better, for worse. That's just where I was just I couldn't handle anything else.
Like you said earlier, bandwidth.
Yeah.
You're focused on flying the airplane, and flying the airplane is all you can focus on.
Yeah. And so that's what I did. But there was this awkward time space between this guy saying that he was 10 miles out or 8 miles out or whatever. And I think that, and I'm turning and I'm looking for him and I don't see him. I'm just continuing on because I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if he's 5 miles away or if he's already landed. I don't know.
Right.
And like I said, I just didn't have the gumption to just say, hey, where are you? So then I remember how relieved I was when the next call he made said that he was, you know, turning off the runway. I never saw him. Never saw him. He must have come in at like 150 knots. Like I never ever saw him. But I just remember
no other calls.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's on the video. Check the video.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm missing. Maybe there was one I'm missing. I think that he didn't say anything after his initial call. But anyway, my brain couldn't process it at least. So
yeah.
But I just remember thinking, of course, there's just like everything is just smooth air, perfect. Everything is just so easy. This is happening. I'm almost done. And then now this one guy's coming in and I don't know who he is, what he is, where he is, you know, but it was fine. I didn't, you know, I just thought, well, I'll see him if he's in the way, which is not really the best thing to think, but that's how I was thinking.
But that's a valuable experience. It would have been nice to have that maybe 15, 20 hours after your first solo.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, traffic avoidance on your solo is a kind of a heavy load, but you handled it. I mean,
well, it almost threw me off how quiet it was because the training environment I was in there was so hectic that you had to kind of be all over the place with and there was something about just, I guess maybe there was some subconscious part of my brain that just thought, oh, the airport will just shut down while I'm soloing, you know.
Right.
But anyway, so then I came in and I had my third landing and it was fine. And then I just remember on the rollout, it all hit me. And then I just thought, please don't get upset, just enjoy it. And I even verbalized out loud. I just said, that was for you, Dad. And then I just pulled off and then I taxied up and then my instructor comes in and congratulates me. And I remember that he said, you did it or whatever. And I said, yeah, you don't have to hear about it from me anymore. Cause I just had been like, I want to solo, like I should get this done. So, but anyway, I didn't collapse in a ball of tears like I thought I would. I just really felt good. And it was a great experience. And it was, really cool to find out right after that my wife was there and she did capture,
Nice.
I didn't have the burden of thinking that she's there, but she was there. So that was really perfect. And
Any
and then
shirt cutting or ice baths or any
shirt
other
cut,
rituals?
did the shirt tail thing. And one of the coolest things was, especially at that time, at this stage now in this community, we have a lot of conversations with a lot of aviation creators and personalities and people and whatever. But at the time, it just seemed really cool that Flight Chops was on my YouTube channel when I posted that video and said, he said something about like, you have really, like great job, good centerline discipline.
Oh, nice.
And I thought that's so great. Thank you. Because that's something that I'm obsessed with and have been even at that early stage. And for him to recognize that was just kind of neat. Right. So all told, it was a great experience. But we'll get past we want to hear your story, Ted, but
I mean, looking back at it, when you hear somebody that says student solo, even when they don't say first solo, right? But any version of student and solo on the radio, it's kind of my responsibility at that point to look out. Like, I don't expect them to be doing their part of traffic management, like they're doing as much as they can. Like, I remember being there, So hopefully that extra pilot or whoever it was doing that.
I guess he just wanted to be invisible. But all this to be said, and I want to hear about your story, Ted. But but the thing I realized not long after is that the real first solo is after that, when you go take the keys to the plane yourself, pre-flight it yourself from a cold start, take it out, and leave the airport, and come back. But that does not take away from anything from that first experience. There's nothing. Everybody universally says that's something you always remember, and it's 100% true. So if you haven't gotten there yet, you will, and it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
Do you think your first cross country put a bigger smile on your face than your first solo?
Kind of.
I would totally agree with you. I was super happy, but there was when I got home and I really started processing how I was feeling, I was like, okay, great. I can take a plane and fly it in a pattern. That's awesome. I have the ability to control this airplane and get it on the ground, but I want to go places.
Yeah.
And when I got back from my first cross country, I felt like, okay, this is really happening now.
Yeah.
Well, and the cross country is the first time that, without an instructor, the first solo cross country is the first time that there are spaces of time that you're in the plane. You're not doing things, you have a second to catch your breath. And, so let me tell mine. It was in March 2022. And that it's not a good time when the weather people are talking about it being record-setting rain, and in that month. So it was one of those, it's like canceling 2 out of 3 flights. Just the struggle with that, and So, but I told my instructor, it's like, look, you're going away at the end of March for like 10 days, 7 days, whatever. I want to solo before then, and we're getting close and everything else, and couple of setbacks. Had trouble finding the second instructor to kind of do a pre-solo check, which they like to do at that school. So we finally get that done, and I didn't expect that it was going to happen on that specific flight, which is always, I saw a few people talking about it in the comments.
And
I'm sorry,
what plane was this?
So this is in the RV-12.
Okay.
So it's the low wing with the bubble top that I did all my training in. And so I know my instructor had been gone all day ferrying a plane across the state and flying back with someone else. And, he was fitting me at the end of the day, for our scheduled flight, but he was late for it and everything else. I'm like, we're just going to knock out a couple of landings and this is it. And so we knock out 3 landings. He's like, hey, I got to take a bio break. Well, watching the GoPro footage afterward, you can see him signing the endorsement in ForeFlight on his phone, which is such a brilliant way to do it. Right.
That's awesome.
And, drops me off and says, go solo now, obviously. And so speaking of traffic in the pattern, though, I take off. This is the little airport that butts up against a busy Delta. And so you always have to make your crosswind turn pretty quick. I got to make my crosswind turn. I look down and I see 2 lights over there. And so I turn opposite. I'm like, I don't know who this is that's not calling in. Let me just bail and figure it out. And I kind of look back and I, turn back so I can see it a little bit. And then I realized that I just avoided the field lights, from like a football field, this right there. So, I you can see it on my pattern where I just do like this thing and nobody has to know that. So, other than that, 3, fairly typical landings. It's a short field, so it's obviously a land and taxi back. There's nobody ever does a touch and go off that field. It's 2,600 feet, 2,400, something like that.
Right.
And but because it's such a small field, your instructor gets to walk down there, almost against the runway of a narrow runway, and stand there right about where you're going to land. So there's a lot of pressure on that. Like, you're not watching it from a mile away. You're 40 feet away, right at where the wheels are coming down. So, there's all the pressure on that. But so, he had some, I had my GoPro going. He recorded a little bit of stuff on his iPhone and, come back in, celebrate all that and then cut the shirt, sign it and everything else. And yeah, so it was at 35 hours. The number to me that's more important is it was at 100 landings. I saw somebody in the comments talking about doing it at 50 landings, and I think that's kind of the range.
Right.
Is that 50 to 100? I'm a slow learner. That's fine. And yeah.
Well, you didn't really figure it out until what, a couple months ago?
Oh, I'm still working on figuring out landings. Yeah. Oh, it's funny because it's true. Yeah.
It's all good.
I actually turned that T-shirt cutting into a tattoo afterward. So
nice.
It even has the imperfect lines of the runway that were drawn with a Sharpie on
neat
fabric. So nobody really knows when they see it. That's why it's not quite perfect, but it's literally just off the shirt.
If you get all of your credentials tattooed, do you think that would help you in a ramp check situation?
Yeah. Well, I do have my solo date and my check ride dates on there. And yeah, I think that would help, right? You get ramp checked and you're like, here.
You're like, look right here. ELT, September. Okay. Come on.
Admittedly, I also have my my wedding date on there, which is really handy to remember. So.
Yeah, that's a pro tip for...
Pro tip, ninja level move.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I remember my instructor saying, "Oh, make sure to wear a shirt. You don't mind getting cut." And it's like, Sam, it doesn't. Any shirt, I'm fine parting with. Right? There's no shirt that means more, and it has more value. I mean, how much are you paying for a plane? Even if you have a $70 shirt that you cut, it's still less than your rental. Like,
Wow.
So.
I just had a T-shirt idea for our midlife pilot T-shirts. We need to make one that's got a template in the back
That is brilliant.
where it can be
Have
cut
a
out.
dotted
cut
line.
here.
Yeah.
I like
And
it.
then have a line for airport code, a line for the date.
Yeah, we should make one that's just like the cheapest possible material and everything. It's just like the
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. The one other thing that we were going to bring up is, and I'll get to a couple of comments in the chat. I like Jody's check ride date is my wedding anniversary. So the question is which do you associate with which? Do you memorize your check ride date and go, oh yeah, that's my wedding anniversary? Or do you do it the other way around?
Do you
Don't
admit
answer.
to it though? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
my check ride day is my wife's birthday, and so that was nerve-wracking because she knew this is either going to be like, Brian's going to be in a very good, positive, thrilled kind of space, or he's going to be completely dejected and
Yeah.
miserable on my birthday. It's going to go one way or the other. So my birthday present to her was passing my check ride.
Yeah.
Nice. I did my instrument check ride on the anniversary of my mom's death. Yeah. And I kind of empathize with your story with your dad, because I didn't really put two and two together until literally it popped into my head during the check ride.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. But then I kind of felt like, okay, I really kind of think that I have somebody watching over me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a smooth check ride. So I did kind of get a little emotional on the flight back home without the DP in there. But
Yeah.
I was
That's
going to
intense.
get to one of the feedbacks from
Yeah.
Dan B. 42-year-old here, around 70 hours, and recently passed my PPL. A license
Nice.
to learn for sure. I've taken some friends up, and I have to say, the last few flights, I felt like I've spooked myself. Have you all done any episodes on being spooked or how to get over the jitters, indecision? I've read The Killing Zone, and maybe I'm just a bit tense from that. My initial reaction to that is I think having that tensity from reading that book is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the jitters are perfectly natural, especially for that first 300 hours, 100 hours, whatever. I mean, I've had my moments of my long cross country solo on PPL. I guess it was winds, but I went up to 8,500 feet. And so I had it leaned out pretty far, and I start my descent into RYY, and I did not put rich in the mixture. And I heard sputtering in the engine. And needless to say, it spooked me and kicked myself for not doing my checklist or being diligent with my checklist. And I figured it out. But you learn from that. And I think, and I want to get y'all's opinions, but getting spooked or getting the jitters, I think is an excellent learning tool.
Oh yeah, it's a necessary thing. I think that One Dull Geek's comment here is spot on. I think the lesson from The Killing Zone is that you're most dangerous when you lose the jitters. I fully agree with that. I think a lot of things are about how you frame them mentally. And I think that we're conditioned to think that the jitters or nerves are a negative thing. But in reality, it's something that you should pay attention to and value and appreciate while also managing healthily. And there will be times where it's not even outright jitters, but it's the same kind of energy. You'll be totally confident, feeling like you got everything all together. You're doing all your checklists, you're doing all your things, the weather's fine, everything's fine. And then you're going to have moments where all of a sudden you kind of get this injection of, wait, everything's going fine, so there must be something I'm missing, or
That's
there's
exactly
something,
right.
So it's an inescapable thing. But what I think it is your subconscious continually probing you to sort of make sure that you're aware of the stakes and keeping you alert and aware. And over time, that'll happen. All that being said too, I mean, OG midlife pilot Chris Moran has a great video about and talked a lot about in previous episodes of the podcast about there's times where he would put cameras on the plane and get everything all set up and get all his stuff dialed in and strap into the plane or whatever and just go, nope, I'm not feeling it. And it's awesome. It's such a great example of, you also don't have to endure those feelings to your own detriment, right? Like, the beauty of being a midlife pilot is that we never have to fly ever for any reason, ever for anything, ever. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you feel like you have to do something, then you've created some sort of an unnecessary external pressure for yourself or something, because it's all gravy flying. It's not anything, I understand that people have trips planned and expectations and the kids want to go or whatever, but you don't have to. Even with all that, you got to just really listen to yourself. So I would say with that feedback, it's great to share that kind of stuff and just talk about it. And it's real easy to perceive, or at least think that what you're perceiving is that you're in a community or around all these people that everybody kind of knows what's going on. And I'm the only one that maybe has these sort of nerves or whatever. And you got to know that it's all of us and all over the place. And everybody's had moments of doubt or concern that are either founded or unfounded.
Yeah.
Ted, if you'll throw up Copper Tech's message in there, but go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, go ahead and do that one first.
Yeah. So Copper Tech says 100 hours and still find myself getting spooked on cross countries when I realize I'm actually doing it. I that is the beauty of the midlife community. I felt that way at 100 hours. I think a lot of us do. I'm not going to say all, but but again, that's part of the progression, as I think Brian was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You get to the point where you know enough to know what you don't know. And also being midlife, where you don't just, run into things. You actually realize that perhaps you need to think through it first, and then you do, and then your brain gets in the way. And by the way, it's episode 16, talking about fear on the podcast, and so we'll link to that one. Suggest going back and listen to that as well. The terms to use instead of saying panic is startle and surprise, and there's actually a difference between the two. But those are aviation terms, because then you don't say you had a panic attack in the plane. I definitely had one moment where in early training where something happened totally unexpected, and it was just a plane like going underneath me when I'm in the pattern, and you just instantly get that panic, just that,
Right.
For me, it's like my mouth goes dry, and it's like, okay, fly the plane,
Right.
and I've had that maybe twice since then, mostly for no reason, but just those you feel like you're being chased by a coyote sort of feeling,
Right.
whether it's real or not, and that's part of it, is learning, okay, what is this? What's going on? Work through this.
Yeah. You also find ways, we were talking about the last comment about 100 hours and getting spooked a little bit on cross country. Sometimes it's important to understand that 100 hours is not a lot of time. It may feel like, because it's been a slog to kind of get that done. I'm not undermining that. I guess it's just insane, the exponential growth that happens between 100 hours and say 250 hours, because you're finally putting all that energy into doing a lot of cross country flying. And if you have 100 hours and you probably got your license or certificate at say 60 hours or 70 hours or whatever, you've barely done anything that you were trained to do yet. And so when you finally get out there and start doing it, and you're kind of just on your own, everything still takes a lot of bandwidth, a lot of, it's really easy to get kind of saturated or miss things or whatever. And you just got to stay vigilant about checklists and all that. And I think that for me, just stretching my boundaries healthily and really doing that stuff in a calculated way. And if you have a methodology, I think about growing your experience, and saying, okay, well, I went this far to this type of airport, so now I'm going to go, I want to go an hour and 45 minutes now instead of an hour and 20 minutes and see how that feels, or, whatever it is. And, I think that at the end of it, and especially in the cross country modality, I'm so much better now at communications, understanding the cues and the sounds of the airplane, navigation. I'm so much better at all those things. So it doesn't feel nearly as taxing, and it feels a little bit more like muscle memory and kind of instinctual, which then frees me up to do two things. One, constantly be judging, where am I going to go when the engine fails?
Right.
And so because I think when you're just starting out in cross country things, right, you're sort of like, I'm just trying to fly the plane, I'm trying to do all the things. Oh, wait, where am I going to go if the engine? It's like one other thing, so
Right.
everything else is so under control. You can kind of just casually always be having a plan, planning your outs. It becomes more methodical as you go. And then you also figure out how to deal with that dead time, right? There's moments where you don't have anything necessarily, quote unquote, to do. Have your flow checks, run another flow check.
That's right.
Or figure out what you can do to get ahead, or play the game of I wonder where my next handoff is going to be, or there's just always something generally that you can be doing, even if it seems completely ridiculous to be doing it this far ahead of the game. It just feels good to be using that energy productively when you're feeling that way.
So to put an exclamation point on it, and maybe to kind of wrap it up, an experience this past weekend. So I'm a little over 960 hours, and I had my brother-in-law with me. He's probably got 19,000 hours. In the 100 hours of Coppertex, it is a lot of hours. But until you've flown in all 4 seasons of weather cross country by yourself, you're really not going to understand the weather briefing until you go out there and experience it. And even at my time, my brother-in-law and I, Stuart, we looked at that weather very closely because it was IFR for 70% of the trip. I had 1.1 hours IMC. It's the cold front was moving in. We knew where the freezing level was, but even as long as I've been flying for 5 years and I've experienced the seasons many times, I still wanted a backup. I still wanted somebody to say, are you looking at this the same way that I am? I don't think that ever goes away, and I don't think it should ever go away. I think that experience is going to continue throughout my flying career, and I plan to keep it that way on purpose. And that assessment of the weather was before I hit my head, not after. I think it's important to note that. So, I mean, I think it's like we said earlier, it's a natural progression to get the jitters and to really, I think you need to keep the jitters. I think you need to hold on to them. So,
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd asked Chris C, because I knew that he was one of our pilots who soloed at the lowest number of hours, and he said he had 16 hours. So I think that the hours aren't everything, but it's also a good gauge. You're certainly probably thinking about it when you're pre-solo to solo time period is, when am I going to be ready? And so we've seen numbers between 16 and 100, which is fine. That shows you that range. And Window Geek said he was at 25 hours when he did his, and again 109 landings. That's my theory of it's 100 landings, not the hours that matter. The other thing is that the whole, and this is how life is in general, but you're working toward higher level thinking as you go through flying. So if you think about when you soloed, or when you're getting ready to solo and you're thinking about that, you've already gotten used to some of those things just becoming automatic, right? You can hold hold altitude without thinking physically through every move on the yoke or the stick, right? And so that's what happens is you're working toward your solo, and then after that, you're working toward all those things being kind of cumulative. And so by the time you're at cross country, you're not thinking about those things you were thinking about in your solo, right? It's just kind of working your way up, and so I just think that's a good way to think about that. Is it's fine that you're at that point when you're trying to solo, which is I still have all this stuff I have to think through and remember and communicate and all that. And you just work your way up as you go through your training.
That's right.
So that I just want to kind of wrap it up with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Next week, I think we're going to be talking about, this is kind of selfish for me, but we've gotten 2 or 3 emails asking about binders. We'd mentioned it on a previous show, and check ride binders, to be more specific. Walking into the exam completely prepared. I have a check ride coming up on December 15th, if all goes according to plan. And I have built my binder, but I am really curious to hear from our midlife community. Please send in your feedback. If you've done binders in the past, tell us, it's basic instruction. What has helped you out? What would you change? What would you do different? We have some comments in our Discord server, but we'd like to hear from the larger community. So email us, please, at midlifepilot. That's midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. It'll be in our show notes. And I did not make binders for my private or my instrument, but I am definitely doing it for the commercials. So we'd like to talk about that next week some.
I would just like to be congratulated or commended for having not said at any point around this conversation anything to do with Mitt Romney.
Binders full of check rides.
I give you my heartiest mazel tov.
Right on.
Yes.
Well done, sir. Congratulations. So again, if you want to follow us, if you want to support us, please check out in the doobly-doos, the show notes. Follow us. Check out Brian Siskin's YouTube page, at Brian Siskin. Probably one of the most under-celebrated YouTubers out there. If you like something with content, something that'll make you think, something that it's my. I can't wait till I get to the next one. It's always the next one. I eat up my Brian Siskin video. So he's one of the best.
That.
Absolutely. Anything else for the good of the order, gentlemen?
Subscribe to the pod. Support us. Merch at store.midlifepilotpodcast.com. And
pity us on occasion. Yeah.
We're just trying to keep the ship afloat, people. This is not going in our pocketbooks, I can promise you.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to sign off episode 51. Thanks everybody for joining in the stream, and we will see you next Tuesday. Good night, everybody.